So, you decided to draw a comic, one in which you are the protagonist, and women actually love you. You spend hours and hours using all of your knowledge of anatomy and successfully posed her to hide both her hands and feet. However, when you had to add the unavoidable detail to bring your character to life, tragedy strikes. She looks like she was dropped as a child. That is when you knew you needed professional help. In order to help you bring your dreams to life, I will teach you everything you need to know about drawing anime eyes. In this video, I will show you how to draw traditional eyes, multiple colored eyes, as well as every eye on the emotional spectrum, thus giving you the tools needed to draw whatever emotion you want. After all, eyes are windows to the soul. As such, we can convey a lot of character in our anime women if we stop hiding them under their bangs. First, we will start with a super basic eye. I like to draw the outline first, always starting with the top lashes. Then add our thin base for the whites of the eyes. Now we can add our bottom lashes. Make sure whatever step you do on one eye gets done on the other right after. That helps you keep the eyes symmetrical. Now we can add some lashes sparingly. Add our iris, and then finish with a pupil and some lid detail. This eye is going to serve as a base for the rendering portion of the tutorial, so be sure to come back here if you need to draw a new base for the following step. Now, using our eye that we just created, we will look at some basic rendering methods. First, we'll start in a traditional style. We want to add a basic white base to the white portion of our eye. However, just keep in mind you don't want to go too bright white here, otherwise any lighting details we add later just won't stand out. Next, I like to add a darker top to our iris, followed by a brighter bottom portion. Then we can blend them for a basic gradient. Finish with hard shadows and add some light spots. I like to keep the gradient darker on top and brighter on the bottom, since that upper lid can cast a slight shadow. And this will wrap up our most basic rendering method for the eye. Next, we will have a slightly more involved version of our eye, still in a traditional style. We want to start by using vertical lines as our base, then erase softly to add a gradient. Make sure that you blend this so that it's not such a harsh transition between the dark lines and the brighter portion of our eye. Then we'll finish, just like the previous eye, with some shading and lighting. You can always use more or less gradient if you want to keep the eye softer or a little bit more harsh with the lines. For this style, we really just used the lines as our base color. Another really fun way that you can do it is with the style I showcased in my How to Draw Shikimori's Eyes short. And in that one, I used cross hatching rather than vertical hatching. So just treat the hatching as the base color, and that softening and gradient is essentially just the brighter portion of the eye. Now we will look at some colored eyes. I will be keeping this beginner friendly, so it should be easy enough to follow along regardless of your skill or tools available to you. First, we want to start with a neutral blue base, not too dark nor too bright. That way all of our shadows and lighting effects will stand out even more. Then we want to build a gradient just like in the previous styles. However, this time, we want to start transitioning our light blue into a turquoise color for even brighter portions of the eye. Now we want to add very small bright spots using yet another color. I went with yellow here, but even greens or purples will look nice. You can always just mess around with the colors till you get the effect you want. Adding some different colors rather than just having a basic blue eye will really help the eye pop and stand out. Then we will just finish up by adding shadows and some white light details. I also like adding a color dodge layer, if you are doing this digitally, over the iris so that it can really help make each color stand out and pop. We will now look at some super basic green eyes with a slightly different style than our blue example. We still want to use a neutral green color so that we have enough space for our gradient. However, for this eye, keep the brighter gradient swirling around the pupil and pushing up into the darker portion. That way it looks a little bit less like a shadow being cast over it. Then we want to add some off colors to help our eyes stand out. I chose to go with yellow again here, but you can mess around and find other colors that you like to blend in. I just find that yellow really pops and stands out and makes it look a lot brighter. Then, using the same color for the darker portion of our eye, we want to outline the pupil as well as the rim of each iris. This will help add a little bit of depth to the eye. Now, in this step, you can take some other colors, such as greens and blues, things like that, and just add super, super faint, transparent light spots in the iris. I did do that here. It's just because it's so faint, it's not really showing through, but it will show through in the final step. Now, for the finished eye, we can see how the color dodge layer helps bring out the various colors in our eye, thus giving us a brighter green eye, but also helping the yellows and the purples poke through that I added in the previous step. You can always add more or less colors to help them pop, but I still want to keep this eye pretty basic so that it fit into almost any project you're working on. Now we'll take a quick look at how to make brown eyes. I chose brown since I feel like there are more colors we can play with to really help them pop and stand out that a beginner artist might overlook. So we want to start with a neutral brown, then make the dark portion of our gradient. Now use a light brown to finish the base iris. I yet again used a yellow color to add an even brighter streak in the gradient. In my defense, I was drawing these after work before I went to bed, and I was not thinking clearly. So I did not realize until just now that my special color to help things pop was yellow every time. My B, guys. Just, you can use other colors if you want. Mess with it. Red or orange works really great with brown eyes. I just went with yellow because apparently when I go brain dead, I just see the color yellow. Then we'll just use that same color to add some circular bright spots to help brighten up the eye even further. To finish, I like using an orange color dodge layer to help brighten up the eye. This helps the yellow and reds and oranges to really stand out, but it still leaves that light brown eye. That way it's not just a muted dark brown, but it actually really stands out and pops, and the light catching it will really help it shine. Now with the rendering portion finished, it's time to look at some different styles of eyes. First, we will start with a dilemma as old as time itself. Do you choose the safe, put-together woman, or do we head over to the psych ward for a fixer-upper? For this first style, we will look at a sharp gaze given only by those losing their grip on reality. First, we want some long, triangular lash outlines, followed by the whites and lid detail of the eye. Now we can add some basic eyebrows, and finish with our small iris, followed by a snake-like pupil. Of course, you can use a regular pupil shape if you want, but I find adding the slit makes the character seem a little bit crazier. Now we need to look at one of the most fundamental styles of eyes. One so popular that every single shonen anime has at least one character that really makes you think, man, I love frogs. To draw our mature eyes, I like to keep the outlines wide on the outside, then taper them in towards the inside like so. Then add nice long lashes. Now with the whites and lid details, we can move on to finish. To do this, we just want to add our iris and pupil. The beauty mark is optional, but I like adding them on mature characters since it visually helps express their age. Now, we will stray away from the huntress and take a look at the anime waifu who has yet to fall into bankruptcy-inducing medical debt, thus leaving her with a gaze full of wonder and joy. We want to start with a very large upper and lower lash outline with plenty of space in between. Next, add our whites, then add a huge iris. Add some lids to finish, and there we have our super big, innocent eyes. Now, if you don't like the style of an eye without a pupil, but you would still like that rounded look, then here's how to draw that. We want to draw a rounded shape to our upper and lower lashes, outline our whites, then add some lash details. Now add a nice full iris, followed by our pupils and lids. We've looked at super simple styles of eyes. Now we can look into expressive eyes. To set the stage, your waifu has called. She claims to be hungry and needs a snack. You rush over in a panic to aid her. It is at that moment you realize, these are not the eyes of a woman with a growling stomach. To draw the thirsting gaze, we want to start with a mature style of lash outline. You will find when drawing expressions that 90% of the expression is in the brows. So for our hungry lady, we want to add a slight bend to the brow like so. Then we want loosely held together irises. This helps give a slight craze to her gaze to imply that she is starving. Then add some little heart pupils to insinuate that we have brought exactly what she needs. We can then finish with blush, a little bit of sweat, and some puff clouds to show that she is breathing heavily to prepare for the best snack of her life. It's time to look at a very serious subject and stop joking around. Our waifu's girl dinner of SpaghettiOs and a bare hot dog just fell off the counter unexpectedly. It's time to lock in. To draw crying eyes, we want to start with eyes that bend ever so slightly up towards the center to give it kind of a scrunched look. Now we want to add some brows bent in and down like so. Keep them very close to our lashes. Then add some lid detail, and here's how we can position our iris as well as the little teardrops forming. Then just add some pupils to finish our tearful waifu's expression. Out of the kindness of our hearts, we begin cleaning up the mess. However, this act of self-sacrifice has failed to serve its purpose of getting her off the tracks. For it was you who knocked the food off the counter. She has put two and two together. Now her once crying face has turned into quite a frightening look. To draw a domineering gaze, we want some thin eyes, kind of similar to our mature style. Then connect the whites. Add some long lashes for this one, just to change it up. Then we want to add a small iris with our pupils. Keep them low so it looks like she is looking down at us while we cower in the corner. Then add some heavy shadows to help set the mood and some high brows to finish our expression. Even though this seems like a nightmare scenario, you have already concocted a backup plan. One so devious, it should work to get you out of the situation. You explain that it wasn't you who knocked it off the counter, but the escaped hermit crab that you had spent all afternoon looking for. She listens, and the gaslighting seems to work, thus leaving her confused. To draw confused eyes, we want to draw large, rounded eyes. We then want to get a little bit goofy with the eyebrows, bending them in opposing directions like so. We can then finish with some lid detail and pupils. You believe the coast is clear. However, that comfort is replaced with fear, because you don't own a hermit crab, and she just remembered that fact. As her fist balls in rage, you begin to realize how deep a hole compulsive lying gets you into. Now, as you can see, I forgot to break this into like 2 different steps. However, that shouldn't matter. Just take a moment to draw the sharp eye, followed by some exaggerated brows to push down on the inner side of our eye. Then we just want to draw some slight lines to show the skin portion of the brow pushing down, as well as fill out that brow. Then add some sharp lashes, finish with the iris and pupil. She flies into a fit of fury. Within this moment of anger, she grabs the softest Kirby plushie known to mankind and hurls it at an easily dodgeable pace. However, as far as a court is concerned, that is a lethal weapon, and that could very well cause your death. We have 2 options. 1, put your head through the wall in an act of aggression to show her that we too are angry at our own lives. Or 2, tank the Kirby to the noggin and then play dead. Choosing the latter, you let out a gasp and lay silent. She takes the bait and is now thinking of prison time. To draw our worried eyes, we want to first start with large eyes, including plenty of space to help exaggerate a worried expression. Then draw our lids in whites. Now add these eyebrows similar to our hungry expression, only now we want a super small iris and large pupils to finish the look. Obviously, there are an infinite style of eyes to draw, not just in shapes and size, but detail, color, etc. However, with this video, you should have the baseline of what you need to help structure your waifu's eyes in the future. It will take some time and practice, but eventually you'll get the hang of it and be well on your way to illustrating the soul of your anime characters. Now, like and subscribe, or the only girls looking at you will be with eyes of pure pity.